It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
Your money can work harder than you can.
Yeah, I think this surprises people. A lot of us, look, I want you to have a good job. We'll talk more about that in a second. But it is one of those things, if you can start young enough, meaning give time the maximum amount for compounding growth to occur, you can turn a little into a tremendous amount of money just off of the growth of letting your army of dollar bills do all the heavy lifting. So it's one of those things where I think we talk about what it takes to get $1 million.
Yep.
And one of the things I love sharing is that whole first inspiration of being a high school student, finding out that if I put $100 a month, I could be a millionaire. What often goes unnoticed in that example is when you pull up pretty much over 95%. I mean, if you look at this, the $100 is so small, the $95 a month for the 20-year-old turns out to be such a small portion of the total investment towards $1 million that 95% is actually your army of dollars growing through compounding growth.
Yeah, I think if you look at it, you take the $95 from age 20 to 65, it's only about $51,000. Yet, you turned into a millionaire. So you put $50,000 of your money away, but your portfolio, your army has grown to $1 million. It's unbelievable. And you can see that's even true for a 30-year-old. 89% of their portfolio can be growth. For a 40-year-old, 77%. For a 50-year-old, 55%. Even someone who's 60. Those folks are thinking, does it even make sense for me to save this late in the game if I'm this close to retirement? Absolutely. Even if you only have less than $800,000 saved right now, it can still turn into $1 million just over the last 5 years of your working and earning career.
But you can imagine, even if you're a 60-year-old that starts saving, because you're building some assets up, that money is still going to be money that's in your army of dollars. It's working even as you're retiring and pulling money out.
Yep.
So you can expand this beyond retirement. It's really powerful to let your money work for you. And I can already hear the people saying, well, $1 million just doesn't go as far as it used to. Inflation, you guys talk about $1 million. Well, who's talking about $1 million? We need $3 million.
I mean, that's our comments are rife with that. And people again, by the way, who's poo-pooing $1 million? $1 million is still a lot of money. But whatever.
You don't get to $3 million without the $1 million
that's
first.
Exactly right.
And it gets much easier once you cross that 7-figure increment. So let's talk about, if you wanted $3 million, what do you have to save per month? And then what do you have to save lump sum?
Yeah, so what we found is that if you're a 20-year-old and your goal isn't $1 million by 65, but your goal is to be at $3 million, you ought to save about $286 a month. A 25-year-old, you ought to be saving about $552 a month. This is what I think is so great for the 25-year-olds. If you're someone out there who just got your first job or just recently graduated college and this is kind of the age range that you're in, not much more than maxing out your Roth IRA is going to set you up to be a $3 millionaire by the time you get to retirement. I just want you to let that sink in. If all I do is just max out my Roth IRA, I am well on my way. For a 30-year-old, if you're starting at zero, you got to start at about $1,000 a month. For a 40-year-old, if you're starting at zero, you got to save about $3,150 a month to get to $3 million by the time you get to 65.
What I think all this shows is it's better if you make it automatic. I mean, if you will set yourself in an automated investment plan, once again, back to pay yourself first, you'll cut out a lot of the hardship that comes from emotional. You'll get, caught up. Sometimes some of your biggest enemy towards success is you emotionally getting caught up in a situation and thinking, hey, I'm kind of scared. I don't want to buy now because the market looks like it's overpriced. I don't want to buy now. It looks too scary. If you make it automatic, that will help. The other part that I like is that this shows you the power of thinking exponentially versus linear.
Yep.
Because I think that's a human condition, is that we always think things are going to work in linear terms. With your army of dollar bills, that's the power of compounding interest and compounding growth, is that it's actual exponential. And that's something you've got to free your mind from so you can be successful.
Now, one thing, and I want to give the financial mutants out there credit for giving us this idea, because, we always show, okay, if you're a 20-year-old just starting out and you want to have this much money by the time you turn 65, you need to start saving this much. Well, a lot of our longer in the tooth listeners have said, hey, guys, I get it. You say there's these three components. There's discipline, and there's money, and there's time. Well, the problem with saving $95 a month is that you got to do that over a long period of time. I would be curious to know, if I wanted to set up my son or my grandson or my grandchild to have $3 million, what would be the lump sum deposit required to get there? Don't worry, we did the math for you. For a 20-year-old, if you want to know what lump sum is required to be invested for them to have $3 million by the time they turn to 65, it's just under $34,000. Let me say this differently. Perhaps you had been saving for your children in like an UTMA, or you're building up some sort of assets, and at 20 years old, you had saved for them $34,000. It is worth pausing right there to think, I have already set up that child. If they don't spend this money and they let it keep working, I've already set them up to have $3 million by the time that they get to age 65.
I am so glad this chart didn't exist when I was getting married. Me and my wife, do you know how much marital strife we would have had when we were talking about cost of weddings?
Oh, man, who are you
if
telling?
I whipped out this chart, they'd have been like, we might not have gotten married. So this is good that this didn't exist when we were getting married, because that was one of the debates. I was like, why are we doing this huge wedding? But retrospect, it actually is a great thing we did the big wedding, but this makes you kind of scratch your head and go, wow, there's a lot of opportunity costs there with how you spend every dollar while you're young.
The other way that I would use this is if I was in this age, right? If I was a 30-year-old or 35-year-old or 40-year-old, maybe I don't have a lump sum to just put to work for myself right now, but maybe I've been saving. So if you're a 30-year-old and you've been able to accumulate $130,000 of investments, you're already on your way to $3 million without saving another dollar. If you're a 40-year-old and you're at $400,000, you're already on your way to $3 million. We just want you to be encouraged that it starts real small. It can start at $95 a month, but as the numbers get bigger, as your army of dollar bills grow, it gets powerful and powerful and powerful and powerful.
So to close out this segment, everybody's always like, well, how do you get started? What do I do? I always tell people, because look, you can get yourself very complicated, very confused by trying to figure out where to put your dollar in the investment, marketplace. Well, I always tell people, keep it simple. If you can come up with how much money you can save when you need it, you can qualify for an indexed target retirement fund. And two of the biggest providers to go start your research with is Fidelity Investments. They have the Index Fidelity Freedom Funds, and then Vanguard has target retirement date funds. Go check out. Those are two low-cost providers, no commissions. Get your money to work, and that will be your first step so that you can actually get that army of dollar bills built.
Love it.